Hello and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Show. I'm your host, Sharon Harding, and today we're chatting with Pixio and getting some clarity on NVIDIA's RTX 30 gaming laptops. So let's kick things off live. Yes, we are live as always and taking questions from the audience. So if you have anything you want to ask, just drop your question into the chat on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll try to answer it live on air. Joining me today is Tom's Hardware staff writer, Michelle Earhart. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good. How are you, Sharon?
Doing well, thank you. And we also have Pixio Operation Manager, Kevin Park here. What's going on, Kevin?
Good. How are you guys? Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely,
Of course,
Kevin.
thank you for coming in.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you on. Monitors, because monitors have always been an important part of the PC setup, of course. I'm biased because I cover monitors here. But, as people started working from home a lot recently due to the pandemic, we've been reminded how important monitors are. And stock has been going in and out as well. If you've been watching or shopping, you'll definitely see that. And I know Pixio makes some great budget monitors. Tom's Hardware has tested a few of them. So for those who aren't familiar, Kevin, what is Pixio?
So Pixio is actually a gaming monitor brand that was developed in 2016. And we are actually based in SoCal. So we are a US brand based in Torrance, California. But basically our brand focus has always been, reaching out to the consumers and finding out, especially on an enthusiast level for gaming specifically, and how we can bring these affordable options to other gamers who may not be able to afford, some high performance or high, very expensive gaming monitors, to be specific. So just the background about us, we are a display company focused on creating high quality and high performance gaming monitors, at affordable prices. Just a couple of gamers originally that we started out and trying to see, gathering as much data as we could and, get a feel for, what's right in the gaming industry, especially when esports was blowing up. Starting, I believe, around 2015, 2016 is when it actually started to take off. And obviously, most viewers might already know, especially when like League of Legends, Fortnite, it became a more viral thing and more of a trend. But we are focused on growing and becoming a part of the esports community, and we are constantly trying to adapt and involve in order to provide the gamers the tools that they may need to instill, whether it be fear or conquer all adversaries on a gaming level.
I love that attitude.
Fear.
Yeah, so it looks like you have a couple of screens behind you.
Yeah, so one of the big things for us is trying to our mission is here is to help you guys enjoy gaming affordably, and throughout the years, we first started off in 2016 bringing out one of the first brands to ever bring out a 27-inch IPS 1440p gaming monitor that's like around $400, and at that time, there wasn't any brand who did that, and the closest thing you could get, you probably have to, break the wallet there around 600 and more, and that's usually when the IPS boom started happening, and everyone was kind of going into choosing between different monitors, and then obviously you have a difference between playing with FPS and non-FPS type of games. So which is why the IPS trend started blowing up, but from there, we kind of blew up on Reddit as one of the most affordable high-end gaming monitors. And then, over the years, we try to bring out more models and new models after that. And this year, we're starting off quarter one very strong, and we're hoping to, increase these demands, especially during this difficult time right now. But we did launch two new models earlier this year. We do have two more models coming up. But right now we do have the PXC327, which is a 32-inch 1440p VA curved gaming monitor that has a 165 hertz refresh rate, FreeSync, and at a 2K level. And then it does come with 1 millisecond motion picture response time as well. And then on the smaller screen that we have here is a 24-inch flat 1080p entry-level gaming monitor. Originally, we brought out the first model of it called the PX248 Prime, and starting this year, we'll be bringing out some variations of it. So for example, this one right here is going to be an upgraded model, which is going to come with 165 hertz refresh rate instead of our original 144 hertz refresh rate. We will still have two of the variations available, and we're also bringing out, if I can provide a little sneak peek, it's going to be called the PX248 Prime Advanced model, which is also going to be what we consider nowadays a fast IPS of basically 1 millisecond G2G. But the other two that we have right now, and this new model is going to be called the PX248 Prime S, which is available now.
So we at Tom's Harder, we have not gotten to check out the Prime S, but we do have a review of the PX248 Prime. So if anyone's interested, definitely take a look. We have a question from Javier asking about the lack of graphics cards. There's been a deficit when it comes to next-gen graphics cards. It's really hard to find them in stock. Has this affected your side of the business at all when it comes to gaming monitors? Like, have been people buying less monitors perhaps because they can't get the GPUs? Or?
Right. So if I can go into that, to be honest, it's not just graphic cards. I feel like it's affecting anything in the electronic industry, especially around PC gaming, because of due to COVID and the recent activity, especially in 2020. Everyone working at home, these demands went up because people needed these, whether especially game monitors itself, because people have to work from home, remote, and then also at the same time you have students and teachers who need to also teach at home. So these students also need some type of display. So which is why the demand has gone up for monitors, at least for us specifically. And at the same time, a lot of gamers are able to still play, and that's one of the way some of us gamers are able to escape from reality and kind of try to have a little peace in our time. So we did have a demand increase, but the lack of graphic card, I would say, is not affecting us specifically, but because of the demand right now, it affects anything that's electronic, especially with the demand right now in the market.
Yeah, and I will say I don't have, I'm not on the corporate side. I'm not looking at the numbers, but from a casual viewpoint, I maintain our best gaming monitor roundup. So I'm always checking those pages to ensure the monitors on those pages are still in stock. And I've been doing this since I started working here, but since the pandemic started, the stock has been changing almost on a weekly basis because the demand is just so high.
Right.
So Pixio is all about, trying to keep the price at a decent, accessible point. Can you remind us, the pricing for those two monitors behind you?
Yeah, sure. So the 32-inch curved screen that we have brought out this year is going to be retailed right now. Selling price is $309.99. The average models or other brands that typically bring out something similar to this would range between $350 to $600, I believe. And we're pretty much one of the most competitive, I would say, in this model. And we do have another 32-inch model, which is the flat version of this, called the PX329. And typically, we were one of the most competitive brands out there for that spec as well. For the smaller one, the 248 Prime S, the regular one we did sell at $169.99, and even for that one, we're probably the most competitive or budget gaming monitor out there for that spec. And then the Type S that we brought out recently, it just was available this month in February 1st. It's going to be retailed right now at $179.99. And I believe in the market right now, we still have the most competitive in terms of budget gaming at the spec and performance that it does provide.
So Michelle, when you shop, I don't know when the last time you were able to buy a new gaming monitor, but when and if you do, is there a price sweet spot for you? And what are you willing to sacrifice to get there, be it size, refresh rate, features?
So I think the price sweet spot for me is anywhere in between $150 to $250. And to get in that sweet spot, I'm someone who really likes high refresh rates. Even if they're not even if I'm not good enough at the game to take full advantage of them, they just look really satisfying to me to just like click and get a fast response and to see all those beautifully crafted frames. So that's normally what I prioritize, which means I'm willing to sacrifice things like resolution. I'm still fine playing at FHD, but I'm running a GTX 1080, which is still pretty great for FHD.
Right.
But if you're going for 4K or whatever, that's a little more iffy. So, I'm also not 100% sold on curved yet. So I also prefer my flat, I guess flat and fast is
Right.
what I prefer. But one thing I do really like is materials like IPS. So like I have a secondary monitor sitting next to my setup right now. That's like an old 60 hertz. It is FHD, but it's not IPS at all. And it is just so dim and dark. So I think like a nice build quality with a good material and at least 144 hertz is the sweet spot for me. And for that, I'm willing to pay up to like maybe $200. So it's cool to see these monitors that offer more than that in a similar price point.
And those are amazing points, Michelle. And I love the fact that you know what you want, and the best thing for gamers to understand, especially for entry level gamers. And I think it's the most difficult thing is for parents who are actually trying to get their kids involved into gaming, and which is great nowadays, especially with the boom happening and education systems actually pushing kids to develop more gaming environments. But basically, it all comes down to what kind of budget you have and what kind of system you have. And for us as a brand, we try to educate the community as much as possible so that they understand these things and some of the difficulties that do come with applying technology, especially as technology is getting better today. But basically, 1080p is a great way to start, gaming specifically. We as a brand actually started pushing the niche of 27-inch at a 2K perspective and at the refresh rate of 144 hertz. And we believe that as technology does get better, the standards are always going to increase. So 60 hertz will start dying out, and whether you game or not, 144 hertz refresh rate is just unbelievable, just to your eyes alone. And because of that, the lower technology is going to die, and higher technology is always going to become better. And then obviously, as technology does increase, prices will go down on certain specs. For example, 2K resolutions, I believe, and 1080p especially has gone down so much now. And then now you see, 4K is actually going down because, you have, obviously you guys talked about HDMI 2.1, but, 8K resolutions coming out, 10K resolutions, and we don't know where that's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. But typically I would say, for a starting gamer, an entry level between $160 to $200 would be perfect. And this specifically is based on what kind of computer you actually have. And then from there, you kind of have to take it like, which kind of games do you play? What do you want to do with this monitor based on the setup that you have? If you are an FPS type of game player and you like the shooting, the first person shooting, then obviously you want the fast refresh rate. And then at the same time, you want the low response time. And obviously from there, you have to choose between the panel types. And then that's where it kind of gets a little bit more iffy because, you have to sacrifice performance over quality. And then if you go into the middle, obviously, there are certain sacrifices you will also have to make in that variation.
So, we're talking about sacrifices, and Pixio is selling budget monitors. How do you guys get those budget prices, and what, if anything, are you guys sacrificing where you're able to offer the same specs as some of the pricier brands, but for significantly lower costs?
So as a brand, we originally started doing business to customer directly. So we don't really sell to resellers and like other brands might have. And basically that's where we figured out, we can actually offer these high-end, high-performance gaming monitors at much lower cost than, big retailers, for example, as like Acer Predators, or let's say the new Alienware series. And from there, we actually also were able to cut some costs to provide a little bit more budget options to our, or at least the gaming community, by cutting off, for example, RGB may not be as something interested. Most gamers mount their monitors, so we bring out just basic stock stands that can help you cut the cost, but have us offer the same performance in terms of the gaming monitor at a little bit lower rate. And as of right now, we obviously the panel demands have been increasing, and monitor demands is increasing. So you can see typically other brands increasing prices, where we kind of have stayed the same and trying to still offer the most competitive budget gaming experience that we can provide for our gaming community.
So we talked a lot about high refresh rates. Michelle loves them fast and flat, and now, which I'm gonna say to you all the time now, by the way.
Oh no.
But we are, of course, we have 360 hertz monitors now. Tom's Hardware tested a couple. Is there room in the Pixio lineup for something like a budget 360 hertz monitor? Is that even doable?
Yeah, so we obviously, we are entering the market as a brand, and just to let everyone know and the viewers know, we are still a relatively small brand, and we're hope with everyone's support that we become a much bigger brand in the future, and at the same time we be able to develop more better brands and bring out more budget options for everyone. But we do have 2 more models that we are going to bring out that's not actually available to display here today, but we'll have it is available on our website at pixiogaming.com. But we have the PX259 Prime currently going to be released earlier this year. We're hoping around March or April-ish. But basically, this model is going to be our 280 hertz refresh rate, 25-inch IPS gaming monitor. And then the target price rate is not still confirmed yet, but we're hoping to release it around the $299 mark, which is pretty competitive compared to the next available gaming monitor on that spec would be like maybe $100 more.
So what about climbing all the way to 360? I mean, not 280 is plenty fast.
Right.
144 still offers great gaming performance, but what do you think about 360? And what do you think about the usefulness of such a high refresh rate as well?
So I think typically it literally is up to the player or the gamer itself, how important that feature might be, and then as well as what kind of game you play. So obviously, if you do play FPS, then that does matter. But you do actually have to, basically you're choosing performance over quality, which is why, like Michelle has a 1080p, but she's okay with that, but and you actually get better performance out of it. So let's say any typical professional esports player, especially in the FPS scene, one of the popular ones would be Shroud. He's still playing on a 25-inch 1080p 240 hertz monitor, maybe like from back in the days. And the reason being is because the smaller screen is what they need to see everything in an eye-to-eye level, and at the same time, the refresh rate is important to him because he needs to see whether or not the movement of the enemy actually appearing at the right time and as fast as possible. And as these specs increase, to be very honest, is even 240 hertz is nearly impossible to see with the human eye, if not impossible. And obviously, the technology is getting better, so 360 hertz refresh rate will be there. You may not utilize all of it, but to be able to even use that, you're going to have a pretty expensive gaming system to actually unlock its full potential. And for us at the moment, we are looking into it, obviously, because we are attacking the more budget scenario. It is a lot harder for us to bring out something like that at a more budget premium price, but it's not off the table. But we are always looking to see more expansion, and I'm sure in the future this might even hit like further down the line 500,000 hertz refresh rate.
500,000 hertz?
You never know, like we originally started like 30 hertz was the max, and then 60 came out. Then obviously from 60 it jumped all the way to 144, and now we have 240. You can't see anything at the 240, but now we have the 360s coming out, and this is basically technology getting better. And I'm not sure if any of the game developers are able to utilize that much, if not even the technology in. But obviously we saw towards the end of last year, with the RTX 3000 series being launched, like these things are possible now. And I think in terms of technology wise, they are trying to push more quality and performance at the same time. But there is still a market for the high refresh rate, which is why they're still developing and still bringing out more and more high refresh rate monitors.
We've been talking a lot about high refresh rates because that's what I prefer. But especially if you play a lot of AAA, single player games, you're not necessarily going to hit those high frame rates.
Right.
What about higher resolution monitors? What is Pixio looking at there?
Oh, the 8K budget gaming monitor. Give it to us, Kevin.
Maybe not that far, but
we get those questions a lot because we do focus on the budget side of things. But at the moment, we're not typically super focused on high let alone 8K. 4K we are interested in, and definitely we are looking to bring out a future model, if I can say at the very least, in the 4K 144 hertz refresh rate. But I mean, the one important thing here is obviously the next gen consoles do push this resolution, but does cap the refresh rate there because you are basically choosing the better image quality, and it's basically overall game experience for the user itself. Whereas PC gaming, it's still not there yet. So even HDR, I believe, just started. I don't think we are actually, like, even the Windows OS processing that HDR into your game. There's a reason why you can only use HDR in either gameplay and watching things. But whereas you have just a basic desktop background or just Chrome, you can't activate HDR, stuff like that. And that's technology. As technology does get better, we'll be able to incorporate that into gameplay as well. But I feel like depending on what you do play, a lot of people won't look for those resolutions. So if you're an FPS type of gamer, you wouldn't need it. But if the PC end side of things or the console end side of things can actually keep up with that high quality, then yes, people will start turning a little by little to the higher spec displays.
So if you have a question for Kevin from Pixio, definitely drop it into the chat. We'll try to discuss it. It looks like we have some coming in as I speak. One from Javier mentioning the various new trends that have hit monitors over the past few years. Adaptive sync, high refresh, HDR, IPS is definitely gaining popularity. What's going to be the next tech or trend to come? So yeah, I'll throw that out there. I have a thought. I think, we talk about its accuracy and whether it's oversaturated and things like that. But I think OLED is one that's going to be coming. It's already found in many consumer laptops, including gaming laptops. And at CES, we were happy to see LG's introducing an OLED PC monitor that's actually in a desktop size, 31.5 inches, versus a massive 55-inch OLED gaming monitors that have been ready or have been available. So I'm going to put OLED out there as the next monitor trend. Anyone else have a bet?
No, yeah, that definitely is one of the next steps. So basically, if panel technology itself, originally started with, let's say, the CRT TVs moving to LCD to LED, and then you had the TN panels that came out, and then from there, obviously IPS did get developed, and then you also have VA that was developed by Samsung. So basically, the next trend is going to be who is able to make these panels. Like Sharon has said, on a OLED perspective, obviously it is going to be super expensive. But other than that, I would say, quantum dot is the next future technology as well. It hasn't entered, the monitor side of things yet because, TVs and monitors are different. But I would say panel technology is one thing that's still yet to develop on that kind of scale. And then obviously you have, the higher resolutions coming out. And if, there is another type of sync technology, whether it be NVIDIA or AMD, that would be another huge thing for it to come out as well.
Well, HDMI 2.1 is offering a built-in adaptive sync where if you have a graphics card that is HDMI 2.1 and the monitor is HDMI 2.1, that'll just have its own adaptive sync versus an AMD or NVIDIA branded one. So I actually did talk to HDMI, the folks who make that spec about that, and if they see it replacing adaptive sync or AMD FreeSync and NVIDIA G-Sync. And I guess their argument is, those are so marketed as having extra features like fighting flickering and things like that, where, they'll continue to market it as the gaming necessary adaptive sync, whereas this is kind of like the HDMI 2.1 is kind of like the essential level 1 adaptive sync. So that'll be an interesting space to watch, how much we see that FreeSync, G-Sync advertising as 2.1 becomes more available.
Right.
So like I said, Kevin will be here. So if you have any more questions, drop them into the chat. We'll try to get into it by the end of the show. But in the meantime, I want to talk a little bit about some gaming laptops because as we know, recently, the next gen of gaming laptops with NVIDIA's RTX 30 series cards started becoming available recently. But understanding the level of performance you're expected to get isn't really as easy as picking between an RTX 3060, 3070, or 3080. So Michelle has been doing some reporting for us. What's the story there?
Hi, sure. So recently for our website, you can read the full review. It's up now. I've reviewed the Gigabyte Aorus 17G, which was the first laptop we looked at with a mobile RTX 3080 card. And then a couple days ago, our editor-in-chief, Avram Pilch, also reviewed the new Alienware M17R4, which is the second laptop we've looked at with an mobile RTX 3080 card. And the thing we noticed there is that there's a massive difference in performance between the two. So the Aorus, don't get me wrong, it performed well. It performed on par or slightly better than the mobile RTX 2080s that we saw last gen at a cheaper price. Although when I think Ampere, I don't necessarily think the same, but cheaper. I think, the cutting edge, which we didn't really see until we saw our Alienware review. So like if we look at Shadow of the Tomb Raider on the Alienware, it got 103 FPS on highest settings at its benchmark, but the Aorus got 86 FPS. So the big difference between that is they're both RTX 3080s, but apparently NVIDIA is releasing so many different configurations of the RTX 3080 that it's not necessarily the same between each, because you have things like different clock speeds and different wattages or TPGs between them, or is it TGP? Sorry.
Yeah. Total graphics power you're referring to, right?
Yeah. So we were looking at these, cards, and if you take into account that NVIDIA is also trying to step back from the Max-Q branding, which we've covered on the website recently, it becomes even a little more confusing. So like the Aorus that we were reviewing had 105 watts of TGP power, whereas the Alienware had 60 more watts. And the Aorus also uses Max-Q technology, despite not having it in the name, because NVIDIA has come to realize that when they introduced Max-Q, they were pushing it as, oh, get more out of your tiny portable graphics card. But now they're realizing, you know, the name has come to mean, oh, it's the weaker version. So, you know, there's still some doubt on what is what. And recently, there's been a leak, actually, from a German website called Computer Base that says it's gotten a hold of the list of config specs that NVIDIA sends to OEMs. And there's 28 different versions of the 3060, 3070, and 3080 on there. Of course, this is all unconfirmed, but that leak led the Dutch website Tweakers, which is a pretty respectable source, to reach out to ASUS, which then confirmed, and it's even on their website now, the specific Ampere mobile configs that it's using in their laptops. And it had 11 different versions of each of them for, I believe, unique RTX 3060 and 3080 and 3070. So, you know, when you're looking at these laptops, you're going to want to be a bit more, have a bit more scrutiny beyond just the name of the GPU that you're looking at.
So what can people do when they're actually shopping and looking at different laptops to get, you know, an idea of like how much performance you can expect to get in general and how it would compare to another machine that perhaps has the same 3080? Like, for example, well, I guess this is kind of a given, but we know that the Alienware M17 that you mentioned with really fast 3080 performance has a different 3080 SKU than what's in the M15. So yeah, you might assume, you know, M15 versus M17 different performance, but as a shopper, you might see, oh, 3080, 3080, same performance. So is there anything you could do, like in terms of looking at the specs or what the vendors show you to kind of understand what you can expect in terms of graphics performance?
Sure. So you're going to be a little stuck if you're just looking at the store pages, depending on the vendor. Some of them, like ASUS, are publishing the clock speeds of their graphics cards and the TGPs that they have, which is where you'll find the most difference between these SKUs in the raw data. But some, like, you know, Gigabyte and MSI are not quite yet. And Max-Q is, we're not 100% sure going forward how that's going to handle it. So when ASUS sent their list of different mobile Ampere SKUs to Tweakers, they had Max-Q in the name of their different configs, but on their website, they've since removed it, probably because that's what NVIDIA wants them to do. So there's a couple of approaches that you can take to finding out what specific, you know, mobile RTX 30 series card the laptop you're looking at has. The one that we'd most appreciate, of course, is checking out the reviews on tomshardware.com.
Hey.
But aside from that, you know, if you're looking at it in store, which is difficult right now, and you might not be able to, but if you look at the NVIDIA control panel and the system information, you can find things like whether it uses Max-Q and what the TGP are just there. Aside from that, though, I think for right now, just because it's so early, you're going to have to look at the sort of benchmark results that people are like us are putting up.
Yeah, and just to kind of quantify this a little bit, NVIDIA says its 3080 mobile card can have a TGP of 150 watt plus, like literally 150 watt plus, and that Alien we're referring to is at 165 watts. So that gives you a little bit of a scale there. Kevin, I'm interested in your take, you know, as someone working at a vendor, you know, specs in general is supposed to give the shoppers an idea of, you know, what they're buying and what they can expect. So, you know, how does Pixio approach this? How do you guys, you know, what do you do in terms of transparency with your shoppers so they have realistic expectations of a monitor they buy?
Right. So like one of the things is obviously for us for gaming monitors itself, it's the technology here is no longer plug and play. So the graphic cards do mean a lot. Your computer system itself do mean a lot. And now the transition between PC gaming and actually or desktop gaming to mobile gaming and laptop gaming is the demand is increasing because the technology is getting better, and obviously a lot of people want to play on the go, or whether they want a more minimalist style on their setup. But in my personal opinion and professional opinion, I kind of see it more like first you kind of choose which brand you want to go with, or which vendor that you want to actually buy from. So if you're like heavily in favor of Razer or let's say MSI and all these other brands that do make these gaming laptops, the thing is the technology between them is not going to change too much, especially on the graphic card side of things, because most of it does come from NVIDIA itself. So you're going to have to choose, based on, what kind of brand you do prefer. And then obviously, Tom's, reviews help a lot. So something from Tom's Hardware, if Michelle has reviewed something, those inputs are going to be heavily favored for, the buyer to actually decide whether or not they want to try it out. And then from there, it comes with a lot of education to yourself. Like, for example, you guys were talking about TGP and the performance and the wattage. You need more power the stronger your setup is going to be. And then depending on how you play the game, and the settings that you set for these games, you have to find out how to optimize your setup to play, at the level that you want to play at. And obviously, if you want more from it, you're just going to have to spend more and maybe get a better system. But overall, I feel like, the 3000 series itself, tremendous increase in performance and quality from, just the RTX 2000 series alone. So, it's going to be more of a take on what you want to get and then on what you actually prefer here.
And then just from like a general gaming laptop buying perspective, there are some other things you're going to have to factor in when you're looking at your expected graphics performance, like, what CPU it's using, what
Right.
sort of cooling is implemented. Alienware is known for having big, robust machines with
Right.
heavy duty cooling to really help keep those frame rates high. Whereas if you get something like a more compact gaming laptop, if you're getting more popular, you're not going to get that same level of cooling, and so your frame rates might be a bit lower. So those are also things.
Right, especially when you're comparing across brands. The Alienware that we looked at has an i9, where the Aorus has an i7. We're looking at a 20 FPS difference, so I don't think it's all in the CPU. But again, it's not necessarily apples to apples with each, and certain brands are known for certain things. So even if the different mobile RTX SKUs are a little, in shadow right now. If you're looking for good cooling and top end parts, you're probably going to get that from something like an Alienware. If you're looking, for pure performance over everything else, maybe go for MSI. So, you also have to look at brand, reputations, I guess.
Right.
And also, I think I'm glad that we have Kevin here. You're also going to look at your needs, right? So this Aorus that we have, the other big feature that it has that's new to the Aorus line is it has a 300 hertz screen, right?
Right, exactly.
So what you're going to use that for is probably things like first-person shooters, which are competitive games and don't maybe need the highest graphics power. You're still going to want, a strong GPU to push out a ton of frames, but you don't need to worry about, ambient occlusion or a ton of shadows or, the prettiest, ray tracing.
Right. And I believe in terms of aesthetics, the Aorus models are a little bit more sleeker, and then the Alien models are, like you said, are more robust, but at the same time, more people, I believe, play on the Alienware laptops instead of using it as like a more portable feature. So they just have it at home. That's their setup.
Yeah, like plugged in all the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then a lot of gaming laptops will start crying and begging you to plug it in if you try to game.
I've
Right.
had this one thing that I will point aside from the graphics card. I've had this Aorus sitting next to me the whole call, and I've been worried that like its fan has been leaking into my microphone because it has been like blasting in my ear, and I just have it sitting on its desktop right now.
I actually can't hear it.
That's
Is
wonderful.
I can't hear it
I don't
either.
know if that's a pro for the Aorus or a pro for the Blue Yeti microphone I'm using, but
it's good for the show, though. I'll say that.
yeah.
Well, also, it sounds like the best way to know, that you're getting what you're getting, like Kevin said, and I'm not being biased, is definitely to check out the reviews because that's the only way you get hands-on
Right.
experience and numbers. And some vendors will share their benchmarks, but obviously, you got to take those with significant grains of salt because they're trying to push their own products. So it looks like we have some questions in terms of monitors. One from Maiko Michalski. Refresh rate is the one thing. Is there an LED technology that can deliver high refresh rates at a moderate price? So Kevin, we spoke earlier about a potential budget, something like 360 hertz monitor one day. What sort of panel, do you have any thoughts on what sort of panel technology would make that realistic, what you lean toward?
I'm not aware of what kind of panel is being used specifically for that 360 hertz refresh rate model, but currently there are three types. There's the IPS in-plane switching panel technology. You have the original twisted pneumatic panel technology, and then you have the vertical alignment panel technology. And basically, as a consumer or as a gamer, you want to know these three things, and these three things are important because the values on these different type of technology are different, and the demand is also different right now, especially for the twisted pneumatic, which is basically the 1 millisecond G2G response time, if not faster, and it's the fastest panel that there is in the market today. They're heavily favored for first-person shooting gamers, but the thing is, this is very old technology and it's slowly dying, and the demand and this technology is changing, which is why you see less of these type of gaming monitors out there, and then more of these IPS types and vertical alignment types coming out. And even for us, we actually currently only have one of those twisted pneumatic panel technology displays out called the PX278, and they're still heavily favored. It's just that this, especially with the fast IPS technology coming out, is kind of diminishing those values, and people are trying to, or actually, I guess, brands are trying to, bring out the best quality and best performance out of these panels now. So if we were to bring it out, the 360 hertz or anything faster, it would be most apparent in a twisted pneumatic panel technology. But just to let the viewer know, and you may know, like, the technology is getting better. So IPS is catching up with this, and in the future, something else might come out, and they might call it something else, like the OLED technology, being able to do that. But obviously, the better it gets, the more expensive it's going to be.
Yeah, and for reference, the 360 hertz monitors we've tested from Asus and Alienware, those are both IPS panels, and
Okay.
they're $700. So
Right.
so imagine the potential price cut you can do if you could get it in TN, because IPS comes at a bit of a premium.
Right.
We have a question from Javier regarding the sRGB gamut. He wrote, most applications are still using sRGB. When will the wide gamut, I guess he's referring here to DCI-P3, when will that be used more? I have a wide gamut monitor, and it's annoying to see so much saturated reds. So the first thing I would say is, if you're lucky, your monitor will have an sRGB mode. That's something we look for when we test monitors, because that will help you get the accurate color when you're doing things like looking at websites on Windows and playing a standard SDR game versus an HDR game. So that's one thing to look for. I don't know when wide gamut is going to be used more, though. It's great for HDR, and as HDR becomes more popular, there'll be more use there. Any thoughts from Kevin or Michelle, and when we'll see more things rendered in that wider, more colorful gamut?
Yeah, so the thing is, the stand for typically for panels now, having a standard of sRGB 100% gamut is kind of the norm now. So whereas before it wasn't, but technology now is meeting those demands and expectations, especially from enthusiasts. As far as wide gamut goes, this is specifically towards IPS technology. And basically what you want is image quality and color reproduction. And you would be choosing quality here over performance. But, obviously now, monitor makers such as us, we are able to bring out displays that can do both. And as far as it goes on terms of application, I would say it depends on the game that you like to play, and in terms of actually calibration on these color stuff and the image stuff, it is up to the user. Each monitor will have a user-defined setting where you can actually change the color temperature between red, green, and blue. As far as wide gamut goes, this is heavily dependent what kind of panel that monitor is. So, most branded gaming monitors will tell you, what DCI-P3 percentage that the monitor or the panel does consist of. And obviously, the higher, if it does include anything over 90%, it is going to be more expensive for sure. For example, we do have a DCI-P3 95% displays, one of them which is called the PX7 Prime, which is more expensive than our PX277 Prime, which is basically a lower tier model of that model. But that focuses basically what gamers might need versus what content creators, streamers, and maybe productivity people might be looking for in terms of that wide color gamut. And then also at the comparison for that is, let's say, Javier, you like to play games that are more single player engaged, where you want to have that visual experience, then it does matter what kind of wide color gamut that it has, and you want to look for that type of gaming monitor specifically.
Yeah, we find that some gamers actually like that oversaturation. Our testing has found MSI monitors to kind of lean, a lot of MSI gaming monitors to kind of lean toward that oversaturation of the reds, like Javier said, because they're kind of leaning toward P3.
Right.
Curious what you think, Michelle. Do you like when your games look oversaturated with color, or would you prefer just to be accurate?
I think, I have a history. I went to grad school for game development, so I kind of liked seeing what the developers intended. But of course, it's your game. It's how you want to play it, death of the author, etc.
Right.
If you enjoy the oversaturated experience, I think that's perfectly valid. That sounds really condescending, but
I know what you mean.
I think I like to see the whole variety, just because I liked seeing, what the artists were seeing when they were making the assets.
Right. No, and that's a valid point, because some people it might not affect them as much. So for example, someone like me couldn't tell the difference between the color saturation between the reds, green, or the blues. So typically for someone like me, we'd be able to use it and not know the difference. But for Javier, it does affect you. So from here, it's actually up to you whether or not you want to change these settings using your user-defined settings. And then from there, you can actually take it another level. Obviously, not everyone is going to be able to afford to do something like this, but basically you would do an ICC color profile. Some reviewers do provide these for your specific panel type. But one thing to be aware of is that, panel technology, each individual panel is different. So if you have one monitor and you compare it to the next monitor and they're identically the same thing, they might have different color reproductions. And this is just a manufacturing thing. And then from here, you actually would be able to color calibrate these to make it identical, or as close as identical as you can, but never going to be like 100% as identical as you want it to be. And then from there, you then it typically depends on, what kind of person you are, and, whether those things do matter to you or not. And then if it's harder to calibrate things, it does get a little bit more annoying, I would say. And then most consumers like to either figure out a way to calibrate those settings on their own, and then there's also consumers who would return that specific product and try another monitor, and that monitor might actually be better for you. That's just a choice that, each consumer is going to have.
Well, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who's been watching. If you've had fun, please show us some love by liking Tom's Hardware on Facebook, liking this video on YouTube, and maybe even subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you're a podcast person, you can also download each episode of the Tom's Hardware Show as a podcast. So thanks so much to Tom's Hardware writer Michelle Earhart for coming by, and a big thanks to Kevin Park from Pixio. Any last words for the viewers, Kevin?
No, thank you. And if you don't know who we are, please visit us at www.pixiogaming.com. And, we are just a bunch of gamers that want to help, the gaming community grow. And we love gaming. So please feel free to check us out.
Awesome. Well, that's our show. We'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you, guys.